Welcome back to the life of Michael Jackson, Part 2, the child abuse, the consequences, and the possible SONY conspiracy. When Joe Jackson learned that his children were talented, he treated them in a similar manner to how enslavers treated the enslaved. Wanting to profit from their talent, he would punish them for any imperfections. He would beat them with belt buckles, electric cord, tree branches, and force them to spend hours carrying cinder blocks across the garden. They were trained for 5 hours every day after school and were not allowed to play outside. Michael Jackson said, "He'd sit at home with us every day after school and rehearse us. We'd perform for him and he'd critique us. If you messed up, you got hit, sometimes with a belt, sometimes with a switch." Michael Jackson became the leader of the Jackson 5 when he was only 5 years old, so he was being ill-treated like that at the age of 5. Jermaine Jackson said, "None of us can remember him holding us or cuddling us or telling us, 'I love you.'" However, Jermaine Jackson also noted that they lived in a dangerous neighborhood in Indiana, and that by keeping them inside, the father might have been protecting them from worse things happening outside. They were caught between a rock and a hard place. But unlike the slave driver or massa on the plantation, Joe Jackson used the fruit of his children's labor to move them from a 2-bedroom house which housed 11 people that Michael Jackson described as you could take 5 steps from the front door and you'd be out the back, to a mansion in Encino, California. Additionally, it is reported that Joe Jackson was especially psychologically abusive to Michael Jackson, who was the most talented of the family. Knowing that Michael Jackson was sensitive about the size of his nose, his father reportedly called him Big Nose. Jackson developed a tic in response, which led him to cover his nose as if he were smelling it, which led Quincy Jones, who had signed him to Motown Records, to call him Smelly. Subsequently, Jackson reportedly had about 100 surgeries mutilating his nose, until at the time of his death, it was rumored that there was just a space where his nose should have been. I can't help but think that his nose was the site of a generational trauma passed down through slavery from his great-great-grandfather, Nero, whose nose had been mutilated with a hot tongue because he ran away. Unhealed trauma in the body from generation to generation. But what about his mother, Catherine? She was a devout Jehovah's Witness who shared her faith with her children. And this is a sect known for not celebrating many holidays that children enjoy, such as birthdays and Christmas. And additionally, some said she was a germaphobe. Michael Jackson described his mother as, "Every child thinks their mother is the greatest mother in the world, but we Jacksons never lost that feeling because of Catherine's gentleness, warmth, and attention. I can't imagine what it's like to grow up with a mother's love. The lessons she taught us were invaluable. Kindness, love, and consideration for other people headed her list. Also, she taught me that my talent for singing and dancing was as much God's work as a beautiful sunset or storm that left snow for children to play in." Michael Jackson also spoke about his childhood and the impact on his life. Quote, "Because I don't read all the things written about me, I wasn't aware that the world thought I was weird and bizarre. But when you grow up as I did in front of 100 million people since the age of 5, you automatically are different. The last few weeks I've been cleansing myself, and it's been a rebirth for myself. It's like a cleansing spirit. My childhood was completely taken away from me. There was no Christmas, were no birthdays. It was not a normal childhood, nor the normal pleasures of childhood. Those were exchanged for hard work, struggle, and pain, and eventually material and professional success. But has an awful price. I cannot recreate that part of my life, nor would I change any part of my life. Michael Jackson, 1993 Grammy speech. In another interview, when his interviewer was someone called Bradley, Bradley said, Michael, what would you say to your fans who have supported you through all of this? And who today, some of them might have questions. What would you say? This was about the allegations of child molestation. Michael Jackson. Well, I would tell them I love them very much. And they've learned about me, and I know about me from a distance. But if you really want to know about me, there's a song I wrote, which is the most honest song I've ever written. It is the most autobiographical song I've ever written. It's called Childhood. They should listen to it. That's the one they really should listen to. And thank you for your support, the fans around the world. I love you with all my heart. I don't take any of it for granted, any of it. And I love them dearly all over the world. End quote. Then there were the 25 years of child sexual abuse allegations. In this video, I will not explore the cases. I will not relitigate it. The cases brought against Michael Jackson for child abuse or child molestation. You can explore those cases on your own. I've dedicated a good portion of my life to working with and for the protection of children and families, and I deplore any abuse of children. Jackson was not found guilty of any of the charges made against him, but most of us would agree that his conduct with children was often outside the boundaries of healthy adult and children interactions, especially for people who are not relatives. He explained his behavior as being the result of childlike innocence and wanting to enjoy a childhood that his father deprived him of. And I can see that. However, I heard someone who worked with Michael Jackson say he believed that some of the child abuse cases were trumped up and used to deprive him of his resources. For example, it's reported that in 1983, Michael Jackson had a conversation with Paul McCartney of the Beatles about the lucrative world of music publishing and owning rights to songs. And by 1985, 2 years later, Jackson, the descendant of enslaved peoples, bought the ATV musical catalog containing Beatles music for $47.5 million. 10 years later, he sold 50% of that ATV to SONY for $95 million. And this formed the SONY ATV business. The value of the catalog grew to $1 billion. SONY was only able to purchase the rest of the catalog in 2016, 7 years after Jackson's death, and from his estate for $750 million. I don't know anything about the music industry, but I do know that if Jackson had been found guilty of any of those allegations of child molestation, that he might have had to sell the catalog sooner and cheaper. But I'll end by sticking to my professional experience and abilities and remind you where we started. America, in the form of slavery, white supremacy, created an extremely traumatic world for Black people. And it's passed down generationally, and families still harm themselves and their children in similar ways that we were harmed during slavery. And it is not without consequence. The pain resides in the body, and we keep on harming each other. And regardless of the success we gain, that pain, that cost is too high. So we have to do the work of healing. And but also feel free to tell me what you think. Thank you so much for listening.